At some point in your life, someone has told you that knowledge is power. That statement is true, but summoners have transformed a simple aphorism into their entire existence. The Summoner is one of the most complex jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. Its rotation isn't straightforward, and there are a lot of mechanics at play that aren't interconnected. But learning about all the individual pieces and understanding how they fit into the grand scheme is rewarding and exciting. In today's overview, we're going to go over the mechanics that make up the Summoner. Let's get started. The Summoner is the only pet class in FF14. Their most basic pet is called an Eggy, and there are 3 of them to choose from. Ifrit is used for single target damage, Garuda is for area damage, and Titan is mostly useless. He has a defensive ability that grants you a shield, but the likelihood of you using this shield in response to your imminent demise is very low, so I'm not going to talk about it. Your pets will automatically attack enemies once you're engaged in battle, but they can be ordered to use special attacks via the abilities Eggy Assault 1 and 2. They can also be commanded to use their signature moves when you use the ability Enkindle. Enkindle has a 120-second cooldown and is learned at level 50. Finally, you can command your pets to execute the ability Devotion every 180 seconds. Devotion is a 5% damage buff with a 15-second duration that affects you and all nearby allies and is triggered when you use the ability Aether Pact, which is learned at level 64. Telling your pet to attack with Eggy Assault is relatively simple, but upon learning the traits Enhanced Ruin 2 at level 62 and Enhanced Eggy Assault at level 74, they become more integral to your summoner's power. Once you learn these traits, initiating Eggy Assault will grant you a stack of Further Ruin. Further Ruin upgrades the instant cast spell Ruin 2 into Ruin 4. Ruin spells are the primary offensive spells the summoner uses. They also have an area damage variant of Ruin called Outburst. Ruin spells deal very low damage, but their potency increases while enemies are affected by Bio and Miasma, the summoner's 2 damage over time spells. The ability Tri-Disaster can be used to instantly apply both Bio and Miasma to a target. Tri-Disaster also afflicts the target with an additional debuff called Ruination. Ruination increases the potency of Ruin and Outburst spells by 20 for 15 seconds, and at level 76, Enhanced Tri-Disaster increases the duration of Ruination to 30 seconds. There's a lot to unpack there, but everything can be clearly seen and understood if we look at Ruin 3 as an example. Ruin 3 is a 100 potency spell, but when cast on a target affected by Bio or Miasma, the potency is increased to 150. If the target is affected by both, the potency is increased to 200. If the target has Bio, Miasma, and Ruination, Ruin 3 becomes a 220 potency spell. The general rule is to always apply your dots to targets before casting Ruin, and to get the most damage out of Ruin 4, make sure a target has both dots applied and Ruination. Before we move on from the damage over time spells, the summoner has a few more abilities that interact with them. The ability Bane can be used to spread the effects of Bio, Miasma, and Ruination to nearby targets, and Fester is a powerful single target ability that deals increased damage based on how many of your dots are applied to a target. Fester can only be executed while under the effect of Aether Flow, which is granted by the ability Energy Drain and its AoE alternative, Energy Siphon. Your Aether Flow can also be spent on an area attack called Pain Flare. Now that you know about the Ruin spells, damage over time spells, and the Eggy, it's time to talk about the big boys. The Summoner has access to 2 additional pets, Demi Bahamut, which is unlocked at level 70, and Demi Phoenix, which is unlocked at level 80. But in order to summon either of these 2, you need to use the level 58 ability Dreadworm Trance. Dreadworm Trance is a buff with a 15-second duration. On activation, it resets the recast timer of Tri-Disaster, and for the duration, your casting time is reduced by 2.5 seconds. You also gain access to a finishing move called Death Flare, which ends the effect of Dreadworm Trance when executed. Finally, when Dreadworm Trance ends, you gain Dreadworm Aether, which is used to summon Demi Bahamut. Unlike your other pets, when Bahamut is summoned, he doesn't attack automatically. Instead, he complements all of your spellcasts with a spell called Wormwave. You can also command Bahamut to use his signature move, Akmorn, by using the ability Enkindle Bahamut. During his 20-second duration, the most I've been able to get is 8 Wormwaves and 2 Enkindles. We'll talk more about that later. After Bahamut leaves the battlefield, your Dreadworm Trance is transformed into Firebird Trance, which is learned at level 72. At level 80, when you activate Firebird Trance, you summon the Demi Phoenix. The Phoenix is commanded exactly like Bahamut, but when summoned, he applies a 100 potency heal over time to all nearby party members for 20 seconds. When in Firebird Trance, Ruin 3 changes into Fountain of Fire, and Outburst changes into Brand of Purgatory. Fountain of Fire functions like a combo starter, and Brand of Purgatory is the combo ender. And there we go, now you know how to play the Summoner. But not really. Unlike with more straightforward jobs, knowing exactly how these mechanics work doesn't mean you'll know how to piece them together in combat. So let's get all these moving parts moving together. You're standing in front of an enemy, what's the first thing you want to do? Apply your damage over time effects. What's the fastest way to do that? Try Disaster. From there, you want to get your Aether Flow stack, so Energy Drain is the next thing on the list of things to do, followed by Dreadworm Trance to reset Try Disaster and reduce your casting time. While Dreadworm Trance is active, your Ruin 3 cast is instant, and you can use this as an opportunity to command your pet with Eggy Assault. Using both charges of Eggy Assault 1 and 2 will generate 4 stacks of further Ruin for you. Once Dreadworm Trance is nearing completion, cut it off with Death Flare. Now it's time to summon Demi Bahamut, at which point you will try to milk 8 worm waves out of him. This can be difficult, especially during intense combat, but it's possible. While Demi Bahamut is being summoned, I start casting Ruin 3, and as soon as the Ruin 3 cast is finished, I cast Ruin 4 and then kindle Bahamut so he uses Akh-Morn. From there, I start casting Ruin 3 again, and as soon as that cast's finished, I follow up with Ruin 4, at which point my dots are about to wear off. Thankfully, Dreadworm Trance reset the cooldown of Try Disaster so I can use that to reapply them before casting Ruin 3, which will be followed up by Ruin 4 in Kindle Bahamut and Energy Drain. There's not much time left on the clock, so we'll finish it off with Ruin 4, followed by Ruin 2. There are other ways to milk 8 worm waves out of Demi Bahamut, and I'm sure the comment section will let you know, but this is what I've been doing, and I've found it very comfortable. Now that we've broken up the most complex section of the Summoner's battle, the rest is just maintenance. If your dots are wearing off, you need to reapply them. If Energy Drain is coming off cooldown, make sure you spend all of your Aether Flow stacks before activating them. Make sure you're using your Eggy Assault abilities to generate stacks of further Ruin, and save Ruin 4 for when the target is affected by Ruination and both of your dots, so it deals as much damage as possible. Even with all that said, there's still more that goes into understanding the Summoner, but this is a very solid foundation and overview of how the mechanics work. The Summoner is most definitely not perfect, but it is enjoyable to play, and once you master all of its mechanics, its damage output is very respectable. In addition to that respectable damage, you provide your group with decent buffs, but in my opinion, those buffs could use some buffs, but that's a topic for another day. Before we close out, I'd like to give a shout out to my newest patrons. Jason, EviPen, and MiniFlame, thank you for your support. It's amazing to know that people are enjoying content that I'm incredibly passionate about making, so thank you very much. And of course, thank you to all my other patrons and everyone who watches, likes, subscribes, and comments, because that's amazing as well. So with all of that said, we're going to wrap things up here by saying, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support the channel more than you already do just by watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting, you can head over to patreon.com/iBluairJgR to become a patron. As always, the name of the game is Final Fantasy XIV. The name of the channel is iBluairJgR. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.